So I'm going to open it up and add Rebecca, Dr. Upsher on here, and we're hoping we have a good 10 minutes for discussion or questions. Again, we're on the webinar version of Zoom, so the numerous attendees videos can't be turned on, but you're more than welcome to drop your question into the Q&A, and we will raise it to our two speakers. There's a question for online learning students: how can they stay mental healthy, to stay mentally well, mental healthy? Yeah. So online learning, I think you, Juliette, you discussed some of those recommendations. So I don't know if you want to expand a little bit, or if Rebecca, there's anything in the toolkit that you could link to for that.
Yeah, I think the key thing for students is to plan their work, so that, because I think with this shift to online, there's far more autonomy, which is great, but it's also very, very easy to fall behind. So I think scheduling skills, time management skills are really important. On a more personal level, one of the students, we presented this work to students, and one of the students said to me, this was relatively early on in the pandemic, but a lot of our international students were stranded here, or domestic students who had parents stranded abroad, and just what was going on in the world. And I would say even now with the war in the Ukraine. So one of the things that I suggest that I do myself is ration the amount of time that you spend being current with the world. I'm not saying disengage, but be very mindful of what you're looking at and what you're listening to. And I'm not suggesting that you disengage, but you just keep in mind that you can care and you can be involved, and you do not have to listen to 2 hours of news all day, every day. So that's one of the things. And I think also for many students as well, which the pandemic really hurt, was physical exercise, or just getting out and going for a walk. And taking care of yourself physically, breaks from the screen, all of that stuff is really good. And you just need to remember, and I'm bad at it too, remember to do it. Remember to get up and walk away from your screen. Remember to read a book. Remember to interact with your friends. You really need to do it. It's so tempting, especially when you're in the zone, to just sit down and type for, I don't know how many hours, but don't do it. I don't know, Rebecca, what would you say about that?
Yeah, I think it's some really good suggestions there. When you're talking about time management, I guess it's thinking about embedding that within the curriculum as well. So it's not just this ad hoc extra session to teach students how to manage their time, because that goes back to the students who need it probably won't have time to attend it. But working in social belonging opportunities, so whether that's within sessions to go into breakout rooms and that kind of thing, or like you were talking about in your presentation, Julia, about Q&A sessions and seminar sessions that accompany those, pre-recorded asynchronous sessions as well. So there are things within the curriculum we can do to kind of enhance social belonging, and that has a positive impact on student well-being. And getting to know staff as well, because when we were chatting to our students throughout the project, they really wanted to connect with who was teaching them as well. So you can kind of embed activities to get to know the teaching staff as well. In the psychology department at King's, at the start of the year for first years, we have a activity, get to know the teaching staff, and the students can anonymously post questions to the teachers, like, what's your favorite movie, or what sort of things do you cook, like just things like that you kind of get to know them a bit better. So yeah, I think there's lots of room for kind of building the curriculum so that if you're a distance learner or online learner, you're not isolated.
I also think thinking about what's our responsibility as faculty to help the students and get to know the student affairs staff. So the staff, the support staff, the academic support staff, which would happen kind of in hallways or, by going and seeking, asking questions, or how do I get to this room? And so they start to get to understand the staff supports across the post-secondary institutions in an online environment that becomes more disengaged. They're not quite sure. So, thinking about that. We have another question. One issue that has come up consistently at I would say this is University of Toronto, are issues with academic integrity, for example, cheating. This has become more widespread with online assessments, as well as online pay for answer forums like CHEG. The university stance has been quite punitive. Any comments on how that reflects on, Juliette, your pedagogical suggestions, or Rebecca, your take on mental health for students?
I think it's again, assessment methods that work in a classroom sometimes don't work. So multiple choice, you're just asking for it. I mean, I don't mean to be flippant, but some things are a lot easier to cheat on, and students know that they shouldn't do it. Having them, educated, the importance of citing, all of that good stuff. But there's just certain assessment methods that don't work. I mean, I heard that there's I think one of the calculus professors at U of T actually has people write essays in calculus so that they have to discuss a theorem. So I think that, changing the material, randomized answers, things like this, I think, and also students in our surveys felt that often the final assessment didn't allow them to demonstrate their knowledge, which I think is a really, really interesting observation. That if and it's also sometimes to do with there's so much content that people are memorizing and regurgitating, and they're not as engaged, which I think leads to what Dr. Upsher said about it's hard, but it's not. The problem is not that it's hard, that they're not engaged. So, and I do think personally, this is about Juliette Sweeney's opinion, I think the whole punitive thing is counterproductive to a certain extent. I'm not saying that that we say on one hand that we want students to do teamwork and group projects, and when they go out into the world, especially as engineers, they are very rarely working in isolation. But all of our assessment methods are all on, mainly on individual performance. So anyway, this is a long answer, so I'll just stop now. Yeah.
No, I think that's really relevant. And it's thinking about assessment style, and like you say, things that worked in person don't necessarily work online, and a lot of online quizzes and multiple choice questions can promote that, as you say, kind of regurgitating surface level learning and revision techniques, which can easily lead to kind of cheating and that sort of thing. So it's designing the assessment so we're promoting a deeper surface level learning. So we actually had a discussion in the department the other day about, do you publish previous exam questions so the students can have a go at them, and that's tricky for some subjects within psychology because there's only so many different questions you can generate, whereas it's easier in other social psychology, for example. It can be easier because you can just change the scenario, but actually that can, in a sense, promote deep learning because they're learning how to apply their knowledge to a certain situation. So it's harder to cheat in that circumstance, I guess. That would be my response in that. What is the design aspect of the assessment? What are we trying to promote? What are we trying to get out of it? And being transparent, I guess.
And I think, like, to the comments in the chat, I do think that there's institutions generally, not just U of T, doesn't really acknowledge how much effort it is to do good assessments, and also the huge class sizes. So exactly, the recognition isn't there.
there's a question for Rebecca about how, I mean, I think most instructors have thought about this. So how do you challenge the narrative that faculty have or instructors have? Oh, sorry, the question just went away. I have 36 teaching hours to go over technical curricular content. Where do I have time to address learning how to learn? Shouldn't this be done before they reach post-secondary settings or classrooms?
Yeah, it's so difficult. And well, the thing is that they're not taught beforehand, and that's the problem. So maybe we need to think of our education system as a whole. But yeah, that's probably above all of our pay grades. But yeah, it's coming together and thinking about students' prior experiences. And not doing that cramming in induction week. I mean, we can have simple things throughout the term that can build up kind of these techniques rather than dedicating, say, a whole hour to learning how to be a student in one session, if that makes sense. So it's kind of things that kind of creep in throughout the semester that hopefully isn't as much work as designing a whole new content within one session.
Yeah, and I think Susan Bondi, hi Susan, wrote, I think a challenge is thinking about whole program learning outcomes, not just course by course. So the full curriculum and how content is built on and how learning to be a student is built on, that it's not just an individual instructor's responsibility. I also think many university campuses and college campuses have learning support resources, a lot of student affairs staff to support some of these development of these basic skills and learning how to be a student.